seems to be a bipartisan possibility now, at least in Washington. Is that going to make tax reform easier to do or harder to do from your point of view?
I think these conversations are always helpful, and I think it's important that we try to bring Democrats into the mix. I think Democrats, with regard to tax reform, have to decide on a fundamental question. Do they think that tax reform that would lower rates, make a more efficient tax code, including on the international side, is going to improve the economy? I truly believe that, as do other Republicans. Therefore, we are willing to do pro-growth tax reform and not be too constrained by a static, what folks call a static score of that tax reform. And I think that's going to be the big issue. I think Democrats, as a rule, will be favorable toward the tax reform because it will be improving the prospects for middle-class families in Ohio and around the country to get ahead, because there'll be some middle-class tax cuts in there. And on the international side, I think everyone agrees that having the highest business rate in the world doesn't make sense. And the kind of way we tax our international companies doesn't make sense because it keeps money offshore rather than coming back. So I think the fundamentals actually are something that we can see some bipartisan agreement on. But the question is, how would you score that? How would you look at that? And would you insist that it be done on a static basis, meaning that the tax cuts really wouldn't be in effect, or would you be willing to have some tax relief in addition to tax reform, knowing that that will grow the economy and in the end result in more revenue?
So, Senator Portman, in your answer, you illustrated two of the issues here. One of them is how much the middle-class families will benefit from these tax reforms, which tend to be something that Democrats have talked a lot about. On the other hand, corporate tax relief, which is something that Republicans, by and large, have tended to talk more about. Can we do both of those without breaking the budget? Because you know the budget.
Absolutely. I mean, I think our system is so broken, frankly. The tax code is so inefficient right now and so antiquated that those kinds of things will help. And by the way, David, one of the things that I think people miss sometimes, it's not just about middle-class tax relief, it's about wages. And all the analysis that I've seen of the kind of tax reform we're talking about will create more jobs, more demand for labor, and therefore higher wages. And that's really our big challenge in our economy today. We have flat wages, we have higher expenses, a lot of people are feeling the middle class squeeze. I think the best way to get at the wage growth side is tax reform. Other things are important too, regulatory reform and other issues, but there's nothing, I think, that would have a bigger bang for the buck than the right kind of tax reform.